A cold December afternoon at Three Rivers Stadium in 1972 set the stage for one of the most unforgettable plays in NFL history. For nearly 4 decades before that date, Pittsburgh's professional football franchise had been associated more with frustration than with glory. While the city prided itself on the resilience and determination of its steel mills, the local team was often an afterthought, seldom making meaningful headway in the standing. Fan loyalty ran deep, but so did the familiar pain of watching season after season end without any real taste of success. Everything began to change in the late 1960s, when the organization brought in a new head coach and committed itself to a blueprint that would eventually transform both the team and the city's sports identity. The arrival of Chuck Noll in 1969 ushered in a philosophy as bold as it was methodical. Unlike some of his contemporaries who relied on flashy gambits or marquee trades, Noll believed that consistent victory came through drafting well, teaching fundamentals, and instilling a belief that every player had to do his job at the highest possible level. His early drafts yielded men whose names would soon be etched into football folklore: Mean Joe Green on the defensive line, Mel Blount in the secondary, and Terry Bradshaw under center. By 1972, the Steelers had added a rookie running back out of Penn State, a soft-spoken but powerful presence named Franco Harris. Alongside an improving offensive line and an increasingly fearsome defense, Harris embodied the promise of a new era. That season, to the surprise of many around the league, Pittsburgh posted an impressive 11-3 record. Decades of futility seemed at last to be giving way to something special. Fans who had grown accustomed to disappointment found themselves trading in bitterness for cautious optimism. The team's ascent captured headlines, but plenty of skeptics still questioned whether these Steelers were legitimate contenders or just the beneficiaries of a favorable schedule. The ultimate test loomed in the postseason, where the Pittsburgh squad would face off against one of the AFC's perennial powerhouses. The showdown came in the form of a late December matchup with the Oakland Raiders, whose coach, John Madden, presided over a roster that mirrored the blunt force and swagger of its city. Oakland's style was built on big personalities and a refusal to be intimidated by referees, opponents, or league tradition. Quarterback Ken, the Snake, Stabler could scramble out of danger and launch deep passes at will, while the defense carried a hard-hitting reputation that made wide receivers think twice about running routes over the middle. Fans who trekked to Three Rivers Stadium that day came braced for a slugfest, uncertain whether the Steelers' newfound success could withstand the physical, psychological assault the Raiders were known to deliver. The game turned into the defensive standoff many predicted. Throughout much of the afternoon, each yard came at a steep cost. The Steelers prided themselves on a smothering defense, anchored by Green and company, which pressured Stabler and forced the Raiders to rely on short gains rather than explosive plays. On the other side, Oakland's pass rush gave Terry Bradshaw little respite. Sacks, hurried throws, and minimal gains dominated the box score. Field position and clock management became paramount. Every time either side seemed poised to break through, a crucial tackle or deflection snuffed out the momentum. By the final quarter, the scoreboard remained an exercise in minimalism. As the minutes bled away, the Raiders managed a narrow 7-6 lead. In that era, scoring fewer than 10 points in a playoff game was not unheard of, particularly for two teams built on tough, old-school football. But the tension grew with every incomplete pass or stuffed run, each misstep feeling more consequential as the seconds slipped off the clock. The Steelers, who had fought their way to respectability all season, now faced the uncomfortable reality that their magical run might end in heartbreak. Yet the atmosphere inside the stadium crackled with energy, a sense that something dramatic still lurked around the corner. Terry Bradshaw's evolution as a quarterback had been anything but linear. Drafted first overall in 1970, he struggled with accuracy and confidence in his initial campaigns, drawing boos from the home crowd more than once. Yet coaches saw flashes of brilliance. His arm strength was undeniable, and when he was in rhythm, he could carve up defenses. By 1972, Bradshaw had matured into a resilient competitor, capable of leading game-winning drives under pressure. As time ticked down, he conferred with Chuck Noll and the coaching staff, searching for a final spark that might save their season. On the sideline, Franco Harris kept a quiet readiness, a hallmark of his play. He had garnered rookie acclaim with a style that melded power and agility, energizing the rushing attack in ways Pittsburgh fans had seldom witnessed. Still, few expected his name to be forever tied to the final seconds of this game. Facing a do-or-die scenario near midfield, Bradshaw lined up behind center, scanning the defense. The Raiders crowded the line, anticipating a quick throw or a desperate heave. The ball was snapped, and within seconds, Oakland's pass rushers surged forward. Bradshaw shuffled in the pocket, stiff-arming one rusher, pivoting away from another. He spotted John "Frenchie" Fuqua making a crossing route and unleashed a bullet pass in his direction. Jack Tatum, Oakland's fearsome safety, closed in simultaneously. An impact was inevitable. The collision that followed sent shoulder pads crashing and the football ricocheting into an erratic, high arc. In the stands, fans saw the ball spinning at an impossible angle, too far out of reach for anyone to make a play. On the field, many Steelers and Raiders players had either dropped to the turf or pulled up, believing the pass to be incomplete. But Franco Harris, who had hung back initially in pass protection, spotted the tumbling ball through the chaos. He broke forward with a burst of speed, eyes never leaving the spinning leather. In a moment that defied comprehension, he stooped low and scooped it cleanly just before it grazed the turf, an act requiring the grace of a ballet dancer and the instincts of a hawk. Clutching the ball to his chest, Harris turned upfield, suddenly realizing that the path to the end zone was clear. Shock and disbelief rippled through the stadium. It seemed no one on the Raiders' defense anticipated the ball would still be in play. Harris dashed past the secondary, crossing the goal line in a sprint that took only seconds but felt like an eternity to those watching. Then, in an explosion of elation and relief, the fans erupted. For a beat or two, it was unclear whether the officials would call the pass complete or rule it an illegal deflection under the rules of that era, which prohibited two offensive players in succession from touching the ball before a reception. The tension in the stadium spiked to an almost unbearable level as the referees convened near midfield. Replay technology was rudimentary compared to modern standards. Television screens offered no crisp super slow motion angles to clarify whose helmet or hand had propelled the football, Tatum's or Fuqua's. Viewers at home strained to see each frame. In the stadium, spectators leaned over railings, desperate for a verdict. After a nerve-shredding delay, the officiating crew signaled a touchdown. Pittsburgh had stolen victory, 13-7. In the dying seconds of a game they appeared certain to lose. The emotional crescendo shook the very foundations of Three Rivers Stadium as strangers embraced, tears flowed, and the collective roar echoed across downtown. Wild jubilation soon gave way to an onslaught of questions. If the ball had last touched Fuqua, the play would have been ruled incomplete, negating the result. If Tatum had been the last to contact it, the catch was good, and the touchdown stood. The officials had made their call based on the best available evidence, but the ambiguity remained. Oakland's players and coaches stormed the field in protest. John Madden, red-faced and livid, demanded answers that the referees either could not or would not definitively provide. Through it all, the Pittsburgh faithful rejoiced, dubbing the event with a name that combined reverence and wonder, the Immaculate Reception. The aftermath did not dissipate quickly. For weeks, newspaper columnists debated the geometry of the bounce. Radio shows replayed the sequence of events ad nauseum. Outraged Raiders supporters insisted they'd been robbed by an erroneous interpretation of a murky rule, while Steelers fans saw the play as the perfect culmination of a year that signaled a changing of the guard in the NFL's balance of power. Franco Harris emerged as a citywide hero. His calm under pressure and improbable reaction time felt almost supernatural. Terry Bradshaw, who had delivered the initial pass under heavy duress, gained new respect for his poise and nerve. For Pittsburgh, that day marked the turning point from a history of bottom-dwelling status to an oncoming era of dominance. Within the next several years, the Steelers cultivated a dynasty that would capture 4 Super Bowl titles in a 6-season span, forging a legacy that continues to reverberate through the league. Harris, Green, Bradshaw, and others became emblematic of a franchise that had learned to win with both physical grit and moments of sheer inspiration. Coaches, players, and fans alike looked back at the improbable touchdown against Oakland as the spark that lit the fire. On the flip side, the Raiders processed the trauma of the defeat with their trademark mix of defiance and indignation. Many of those players carried a chip on their shoulders for years, convinced they'd been denied a rightful victory by a fluke or by the officials' rushed judgment. Some credited that heartache as a motivating factor for the Raiders' eventual triumphs in the later 1970s and early 1980s, when they would win multiple Super Bowls under Madden's leadership. Yet the bitterness never fully subsided for the men who had watched helplessly as Harris streaked toward history. Even decades later, the play remains a centerpiece of NFL mythos, regularly featured in highlight reels and countdown lists of greatest moments. In Pittsburgh, the exact spot where Harris scooped up the ball has been commemorated, a shrine to the team's metamorphosis from also-rans to champion. Franco Harris would enjoy a Hall of Fame career that included more than 12,000 rushing yards and a Super Bowl MVP honor. Yet, in the hearts of many, nothing eclipsed that single, spectacular second when he turned a deflected pass into the stuff of legend. Questions about the Immaculate Reception's legality remain a staple of barroom arguments and online forums. Frame-by-frame dissection of grainy footage has yielded no universal consensus. The NFL, for its part, has long since declared the official record unalterable. Pittsburgh won, and the iconic play stands untouched. That lingering aura of mystery, did Fuqua or Tatum touch it last, only adds to the lore, ensuring that the mystique surrounding those final seconds never dims. Through it all, the essence of what happened on that December day transcends the rulebook. It speaks to the unpredictable drama that underpins the sport itself, where a single bounce can pivot entire seasons or reshape the fortunes of cities. It showcases the dual realities of professional football, the razor-thin margins between heartbreak and joy, and the possibility that grit and reflex can conspire to produce the seemingly impossible. For the Steelers, who had endured so much failure for so long, that improbable bounce was more than a touchdown, it was an affirmation of hope. Once the confetti settled, Pittsburgh could finally believe in its own capacity for magic. The Immaculate Reception, as it quickly became known, endures as a symbol of unquenchable spirit. Fans still regale newcomers with tales of where they were when Franco Harris improbably scooped up that ball. Steelers legends from the 1970s often recall the episode as the exact second they realized something special was taking shape, a unifying force binding a team to its city in a way few franchises have ever matched. Even those who arrived in Pittsburgh decades later soon learn the story, discovering that for generations of local families, the moment stands alongside personal milestones as a proud piece of heritage. Today, the NFL is vastly different in technology, rules, and visibility. The league scrutinizes even the smallest details with high-definition camera angles and replays from every conceivable vantage point. Such an event, were it to happen now, would be dissected instantaneously and judged with far more clarity. Yet fans cling to the uncertainty of that winter day in 1972, the borderline miraculous nature of a deflection turning into a touchdown just before the final whistle. That fleeting collision of happenstance and athletic prowess is precisely why people watch sports, cherishing those episodes that transcend logic and vault themselves into cultural mythology. In that sense, the Immaculate Reception will forever stand as both a historical pivot and a reflection of the intangible magic that occasionally blesses the gridiron. Pittsburgh's transformation from doormat to dynasty can be traced to many factors: tactical genius, disciplined drafting, the emergence of a star-studded roster. Yet it all seemed to crystallize in one instant where a ball, suspended in midair, found its way into Franco Harris's hands. What followed was pure euphoria, not just for a franchise and a city, but for anyone who believes that in sports, miracles can happen at any moment, especially when all hope appears lost.